Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the Entertainment Headquarters, and welcome to another review. And the review we're about to look at is for a action sci-fi comedy. It is a film that, I had some interest in when I first seen the first trailer, and it really grabbed us as just being something that's mindless fun. And that's pretty much what this is. This is kind of the movie that you can just switch your brain off and have fun with. And it knows exactly the kind of movie it is. And the film I'm talking about is, of course, Cold Storage. Now, this film reminds me pretty much of films that I grew up with, those classic sci-fi comedy films, or films that, have, it's developed a cult following in many ways, and have also films that you can just switch your brain off and have fun with. And it reminds me of things like from the 80s Critters. It has elements of the Blob in there because there's elements of horror. There's also, it reminds me in many ways, there's one particular scene in this that is like an homage, a tribute to Dawn of the Dead, when it came to the bikers going into the mall and trashing the mall. There's a scene in this film that very much takes elements from there but make it more comedic and fun. And it like I say, it knows the kind of movie it is. It's written on the tin. You just switch your brain off and have fun with it. It also is a movie that reminds me of a film that came out in the 2000s called Evolution, with David Duchovny from X-Files, which, it has a very similar tone and feel to it, but this also works more with the horror action comedy elements to it. So Cold Storage is a 2026 horror comedy film directed by Johnny Campbell from a screenplay by David Cope, based on his 2019 novel of the same name. It stars Georgina Campbell, who was in Barbarian, who I thought did a brilliant job in that horror film. Joe Keery, who, is coming off the success of Stranger Things, and I think he's going to, go forward. It's going to be a name we're going to be hearing a lot of. And of course, it also has Liam Neeson. And it follows the attempt at containing a parasitic fungus that leaks out of an abandoned military base. And that's your basic plot. It's very simplified. It's set up very easily in this film. So you basically have a backstory and kind of like a story where you see this fungus that is discovered. That's like this extraterrestrial fungus, and things go awry. And Liam Neeson's character and his people that work for the government and the military are able to stop the fungus originally from spreading. They then contain it. They then put it inside the very bottom layer of this storage facility, this high secure military security base. Once that happens, many years later, that fungus and its security is still kept at the bottom layer of this huge military base, but the next floors above it have now been conformed and transformed into a storage facility. And Joe Keery's character, he basically becomes an employee of this storage facility. And, his character that he plays in this film, it's very, it's similar to Steve's character in Stranger Things. He plays Tea Cake McCam. Travis Tea Cake McCam is his name in this. And then you have Naomi, who is the character played by Georgia Campbell. And basically, as the plot progresses, they're just kind of living day to day, running this storage facility when suddenly a character played by the fantastic Vanessa Redgrave, Ma Rooney, she's called, comes to the storage facility, and she events transpire where the fungus, this extraterrestrial fungus, then begins to spread. And as it starts to spread and leak out from the storage facility, from the ground floor, that's where fun begins. That's where you start to see, people turn up, animals. You've got rats that get heavily affected, and when the rats get affected, it's very similar to the scene in Stranger Things, where you have in the third season of that show, where you had the rats that kind of get, they kind of get taken over by the mind flare, and they start to explode and accumulate together to form the embodiment of the mind flare. There's events in here where with the fungus, if you are infected, you kind of like become like a zombie state. But then there's also elements of it where after a while you then decide to expire and explode. And when you explode, the fungus is then obviously spread about. And then if you're affected by the fungus, the events start to transpire again and the cycle begins again, where if you're infected, you'll become this zombified state, and then you'll kind of become manic, and then eventually, boom, you will, when your time comes, explode, and you will then spread the fungus further. And Liam Neeson's character, after, he's kind of, informed that the storage facility has been kind of breached, he then has to go back out of retirement to try and stop the fungus again from spreading, alongside Joe Keery's character. And you know what? It's just one of those fun films. I enjoyed the film for what it is. I enjoyed the film. I love the setting in the storage facility, but it eventually does break out of that. You're introduced to a different bunch of characters. So you have this character who was eventually infected by the fungus. And she is Dr. Hero Martins. She is like one of the scientists who, is trying to keep everything contained, but things don't work out for her, and it's fun. You have another character there who's called Mike, who, he's an interesting character. He's like also in many ways a little bit like the villain, but he's not a nice dude in many ways. So you have this character. So there's a lot of great stuff in this. It like, for the budget that they had, I thought that they did a great job with the special effects. I thought the effects that they used in this film were great. It's pretty much CGI heavy. And as you know, that's the go-to now in Hollywood. But some of the CGI works really well and works really effectively throughout the course of this movie. Like, I love the animation of the cat that got infected. That was great stuff. And I was really surprised when that particular scene happened with the cat. Who's like a deceased cat that suddenly then gets infected and becomes alive and goes manic. And like I say, there's this weird homage to Dawn of the Dead, or is it Day of the Dead? Sorry, my mind, I cannot remember which one. Where there's the mall scene where the bikers turn up for some weird reason. They come to the storage facility to steal some things, and all hell breaks loose. And it's just a fun caper, all in all. And when it comes to Joe Keery in this, I thought he did a fantastic job. The acting in this is pretty well done. They all do a great job acting wise in the characters that they play. And this felt like kind of like, after doing Stranger Things, this felt like just like another easy role for him to get his hands on, and to capture the Stranger Things audience, to bring them in. And I think it's pretty much worked, because I do feel like this story in this movie It fits really well with the vibe of Stranger Things, the look of Stranger Things. But like, I also see what I really liked about it. It reminded me of things like what I grew up with, like The Blob, Critters, things of that nature. Those wacky action sci-fi horror comedies from that time period, and it fits well with those kind of films. And like I say, the whole movie itself, it's just fun. It doesn't take itself too serious. I don't think it's going to be on the list of many people's films of the year. It's just, it's just a film that you can put on, switch your mind off, enjoy the laughs, enjoy the performances, and enjoy the craziness that's transpiring on screen. And that's the kind of movies that sometimes you need. You need those kind of movies when things are getting too serious, or you just need to switch off and chill. This will put a smile on your face. And Joe Keery, like I say, he's an actor that is at the minute, I think, also focusing heavily on his music career. And I think potentially he may be selective of the movie roles or television roles he takes on as he's venturing more into music. There's rumours that he potentially could be playing Nova in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That would be something I would very much like to see, because I do think he has something there and he's generating a huge fan base. And it'd be nice to see him, build on the success of Stranger Things and do a lot of interesting roles going forward. Liam Neeson surprised me in this film, because when it comes to Liam Neeson, he's now in his late 60s, I think, pushing, I'm not sure, he could be in his 70s. And, he was a well-known actor, got many interesting roles. I loved him in Rob Roy, for example. Then he kind of phased away for a while, and then he did the Taken movies, and the Taken movies kind of propelled him into, like, a new audience, a new fan base. People were rediscovering him, and he's done a lot of action movies. He's done some really good action movies, some hit and miss action movies. But now that he's at a certain age, he can't, do those kind of movies like he used to do. So I've noticed now he's now doing a lot more of these like lower budget movies that are a mixture of action, but not on the level of what he was used to doing, and also with a lot of dry humor. So I've finally got around to watching The Naked Gun, and I thought Liam Neeson did a fantastic job. When I first seen the trailer, I kind of was cringed. I didn't know if I'd like it or not. Then I seen the reviews, and the reviews really praised the movie for being a really good tribute to the original set of movies in their Police Squad. And so when I finally got round to seeing it, I generally was pleasantly surprised. And I thought him and Pamela Anderson did a great job in that movie. And going forward, I can see him, because of the age he is and because, he's slowing down. I generally feel that's the direction his career is going to go now. He's probably going to try and do more of these slapstick, dry humor kind of action comedy roles, and I think he's best suited at doing that now, and I think he's really carving his niche in those particular movies. In this particular movie, though, it does have a little bit of humor. The humor is the kind of humor you got in Stranger Things. It's not totally slapstick like, of course, The Naked Gun. But Joe Keery, you see the elements of Steve in this, and a lot of people might be going to see this because it could, be very much like a Steve spin-off from Stranger Things. That's the vibes you get from this as well. And all the Stranger Things fans, I could imagine, are going to see this because of Joe Keery and the success of that show. But I went into this with my mind switched off and loved it and discovered it for what it is. Like I say, it's an homage to those movies I grew up with, like The Blob, critters. Also, like I mentioned, I got these elements and feels and vibes from that film that came out in the early 2000s called Evolution with David Duchovny. I got those vibes and elements in this particular film. So in all, if you want to just put a movie on that you can switch your mind off, enjoy the laughs, enjoy, the cinematography and it does have some, great scenery in this, and in terms of like the CGI and the slapstick horror comedies, which is what this is aimed to be. So yeah, go out there and check out Cold Storage. And if I'm gonna rate this, I'm gonna rate this a 7 out of 10. I see it for what it is. I enjoy it for what it is, and it's one of those films that will I watch again? Probably not straight away. Probably in a little while I'll watch this again. But I think this is a film that I think even a lot of teenagers will enjoy. Like I say, it's aiming for the Stranger Things audience. Liam Neeson does a great job. Joe Keery does a great job. Georgina Campbell does a great job. Vanessa Redgrave is in this, who is a legend of cinema and screen, and she does a decent job in this for the small, role that she has and plays in. She does a fairly good job. Is Ma Rooney, who, and like I say, the biggest thing that I took away from this as well is, the great like homage to, I think it was Dawn of the Dead or with the Biker Gang. I really enjoyed them elements in this as well. So yes, 7 out of 10 for Cold Storage. If you haven't checked it out, please check it out. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Are you a fan of Joe Keery? Are you a fan of Stranger Things? Can you see the similarities between the two shows when it comes to some of the comedy and the horror comedy elements as well? Let me know in the comments below. But until next time, keep on enjoying the movies, keep on enjoying all things entertainment, and I'll catch us all at the next one.